All right, here we go. Today we're going to be talking about the process of going to change your race at the Social Security office and why you can do that. What laws govern your ability to go change. I'm starting to find that some people are getting held up when they go to the Social Security office. They have some people who are ignorant to the choice that you have. Knee-jerk reaction when you say, I'm here to change my race. They like, what? You can't do that. They almost feel like it's illegal or something. So what I want to do is I want to show you some federal paperwork that governs this choice that you have. Okay. Now, a lot of people have no idea that you could choose your race and you can choose anyone that you want. I've explained to this class that the 14th Amendment changed our society from ethnic nationalism to civic nationalism. In ethnic nationalism, race is exclusive. Race is tied to heritage, to bloodline, to ancestry. That's the way a society works when they're an ethnic nationalist society. That's ethnic nationalism. When you change to civic nationalism, citizenship is not by blood right anymore. Citizenship isn't governed by ancestry. It's governed by birthright, meaning that it's not tied to your blood. Anybody born in the country has the right and claim to citizenship. Okay, now, what we need to understand is that when a country changes from ethnic nationalism to civic nationalism, the categories that were exclusive, when I say exclusive, that means everybody couldn't join a category. Everybody couldn't check white before because everybody wasn't born in Europe or, have some ancestry that's tied to what whiteness was. When you change to civic nationalism, now anybody can check anything. The categories are voluntary. Okay, now this is some proof of it. Right here is, this is from the whitehouse.gov. Whitehouse.gov. It's called the Revisions to the Standards for the Classification on Federal Data on Race and Ethnicity. I find a lot of information when I go and I search for revisions, how they revise stuff. Every time they tell you about how they have to revise stuff, they give you a little history about, whatever they're revising. In this case, they're talking about revisions to federal data on race and ethnicity. Because they're talking about federal race and ethnicity and revisions, they got to give you a little history. They got to tell you who and what and why and when. Okay, so race and ethnicity, federal data on race and ethnicity falls under the Office of Management and Budget. Okay, now the first thing I want you to understand is the people who care about race and ethnicity in America, as far as the federal government is concerned, are the people who manage the country's budget. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to understand. The people who want to know your race are the people who manage the budget, right? And you got something called white supremacy, right, and white privilege in this country, right? And you want to know how the government can be behind stuff like that. Well, we give them the racial data that they are able to take and manage the country's budget with. Okay, that's the first thing I need you to understand. Agency, Executive Office of the President. Can you get any higher when you're talking about offices responsible for wanting to know what your race is? Executive Office of the President, Office of Management and Budget, Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. All right. Now, it gives you a summary, effective date, and you guys can go look this up. Let me give you the date on this one too. This was Federal Register Notice 1997. I graduated from high school. Give you a little how old I am. All right. Background. Remember, when they doing revisions, they got to give you a little history. I've used I love this last sentence on here because it really tells you something about how the government sees race. Okay, it says these categories represent a social political construct designed for collecting data on race and ethnicity of broad population groups in this country and are not anthropological or scientifically based. Okay, the government is saying that the racial categories are not anthropological, that's the science of humans, or scientifically based at all. There is no science behind the categories. Okay, now, comprehensive review process. It says the racial and ethnic categories set forth in the standards should not be interpreted. Okay, should not be interpreted as being primarily biological or genetic in reference. So at the end of background, it says the categories are not anthropological. They're not scientific at all. We go down a little bit further, it says they're not biological or genetic in reference. They should not be looked at as that. And so anybody that's, thinking that your racial category is tied to some type of blood or ancestry, right? That's almost like believing the one drop rule is real. That's almost like believing in the one drop rule. If you think your race has something to do with some blood, then that's almost like believing that the one drop rule is real in a system where you can choose your race. It has nothing to do with your ancestors or your bloodline. All right. And so this is the United States government, Office of the President, Office of Management and Budget, saying that the racial categories are not anthropological, are not scientifically based, should not be interpreted as being primarily biological or genetic in reference. Okay? It's not me saying it. It's the highest office of the country and the people who manage the money. All right, now let's go down here to D, because D says, go down to D. D says the OMB's decisions. Now, when you revising something, then they got to tell you what they decided. All right, so let's read this OMB decisions. And this right here is very key for you, Jeff, when you talking to people or anybody really that has not gone down there yet, but that wants to go down there, and they want to go down there with a little bit of power and a little paperwork to slow somebody up that knee-jerk reacts to you saying that I'm here to change my race. And they look at your dark skin and they're like, what do you mean? You can only be one race here? You black. All right, this is what's going to hold them up. And we're going to read the whole thing. OMB's decisions. D. This section of the notice provides information on the decisions taken by the OMB on the recommendations that were proposed by the Interagency Committee. The committee's recommendations address options for reporting by respondents, formats of questions, and several aspects of specific categories, including possible additions, revised terminology, and changes in definitions. In reviewing the OMB's decisions on the recommendations for collecting data on race and ethnicity, it is useful to remember that these decisions retain the concept that the standards provide a minimum set of categories for data on race and ethnicity. Good morning. Mute your mic, dear. All right. It permits the collection of more detailed information on population groups, provided that any additional categories can be aggregated into the minimum standard sets of categories. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. It says, do not establish criteria or qualifications such as blood quantum levels that are to be used in determining a particular individual's race or ethnic classification. Okay? Let me repeat that. They decided that we can't establish any criteria or qualifications for the racial categories. For example, the one drop rule. Where you born, ancestry. We can't use that. We can't use no qualifications for the categories. Meaning you can choose any one you want, and there's no way that we could put any type of criteria or qualifications that somebody got to meet in order to hit one of these categories. All right. And then the second one says, and the last one says, do not tell an individual who he or she is, or specify how an individual should classify him or herself. When you go down to the Social Security office and I'm here to change my race, they look at you like, wait a minute, you can't change your race. Doesn't the last one say that by federal mandate, we cannot, do not, this is your rules in conducting the collection of data, do not tell an individual who he or she is, or specify how an individual should classify him or herself. You can't tell nobody what race they are. There aren't no qualifications or criteria for the racial categories. When we collecting this information, we have to be very, very clear that there ain't no qualifications, and we cannot tell anybody who they are. Okay? So like if you wanted to go and you haven't gone and you think that this might be some problems because I'm going to the hood and I got a black receptionist, and I come down there and be like this, I'm here to change my race, I'm here to check white, and then she look at you with the stink face like, wait a minute, you what? You can't do that. Look, not even truly understanding that that's your right to do, but just common knowledge and social race says that no, you could never be white because I can see your skin and you're dark skin. No. Race is not about blood. It's not about ancestry. You don't owe nothing to your ancestors by keeping checking black because it ain't got nothing to do with them. This is about status and citizenship, not about blood. And they make it clear. The federal government is making it clear. When we are collecting this stuff, it's not anthropological. It's not scientifically based. It should not be looked at as being primarily biological or genetic. No qualifications or criteria have to be met in order to meet or check one of these categories. And no federal employee should be able to tell an individual individual who he or she is, or specify how an individual should classify himself or herself. These are the laws that govern your choice. Okay? When they telling you that it ain't about blood, and you keep thinking black is about blood, black is my ancestry, black is my this, my that, and the government is saying we ain't looking at it like that. We putting in our paperwork that while you keep talking about ancestry and all that type of stuff, we don't look at it like that. We don't, it's not anthropology to us. So the study of human beings, race ain't got nothing to do with that as far as the government is concerned. Science, it said not scientifically based. That means no science. No science that you can come up with, race governs. It has no, it's not about science, no science. And then to just keep making the point clear, then they say it's not biological or genetically based. That means science. When I say biology, that's science. When I say genetics, that's science. But I won't stop at just saying it's not scientifically based. I'm gonna keep going and tell you that it ain't biological, it's not genetic. Then what is it then? I'm telling you what it's not, but I ain't telling you what it is. What am I choosing? Listen, if anybody can choose any race, right? If there's no qualifications and nobody can tell an individual how they should classify themselves, what am I choosing? Because this whole time, everybody thought that when they was filling out race, they was filling out their ancestry link. They thought blackness was their heritage. They thought that black was not a inclusive category that anybody can check. Black people thought that black was exclusive to just them, my own category. But it's not yours. It's not about just the descendants of the slave. Okay? You got Hispanics that when they hit Hispanic, they hit black too. They compromise about 4% of the 13% of the black demographic, percentage in this country. You also got people who come from all 54 countries in Africa, and all of the Jamaica and all of the islands and all that come over here and hit black too. They add to the percentage of the black category. When it's all said and done, descendants of the slaves are about half of the people that's checking black in this country when you add in the Hispanics and the rest of the dark-skinned people from Africa and the islands of the world. Black is not an exclusive category because race is voluntary and anybody can choose it. So just like you think I can't check white because it's exclusive, we're teaching that no, white is not exclusive. Anybody can choose it. And then we turn around and we showing you that even your black category that you think is all yours ain't all yours, because half the people who check it in America are not the descendants of the slaves. So now all we showing you is from white to black that these categories are not exclusive. They don't mean heritage, genetics, biology, ancestry, none of that. So the question, right, is what are you choosing then? See, that's the question that I ask you. If I show you all of these reasons why race is not exclusive, it ain't about heritage, it ain't about ancestry, then what is it about then? See, people will be stuck when you put all of these different things in front of their face and to be like, look, let me go. I'm gonna go a step further. I'm gonna go a step further, and I'm gonna show you why reparations is going to be impossible in this country. It's a whole lot of different reasons, but if I just stick right here on the fact that the categories ain't exclusive, right? How do you pay reparations, right? Reparations, the thought of reparations, right, is paying for reparations for slavery, right? The descendants of the slaves are supposed to get reparations, right? And so if we understand that during the time of slavery, our country was ethnic nationalism, that's what governed our country, meaning that the categories were exclusive, right? Not anybody could be black, anybody could be white like we are now, right? Trying to pay a group reparations would make sense if they a group that's tied by blood or some type of science that could be proven, right? But we live in a time where anybody can check black. Now, if you're going to try to do it at reparations, how do you do that? Watch this. If the federal government decided that we are going to pay reparations to all the blacks, right? Race is voluntary. Anybody can check black. Right now, the demographics of black is 13%. If they pass some reparations amendment or something like that, then you'll have 45% blacks out of nowhere. Why? Because the categories aren't exclusive. You can't tell nobody who or he or she is, right? Anybody could go down there and check black. It could be 80% black people now that they got to split this money with, because guess what? Anybody can go down to the social, change their race, right? Can't nobody stop them because it ain't no criteria or no qualifications. See, because black not exclusive, you can't even do no even thought of reparations. Not based on no racial category that anybody can check and change whenever they want. That's the part that they not telling you. They try to give you all these different stupid ass reasons why they can't do it. But the real reason is that the categories aren't exclusive. Anybody can check them at any time. It's your right. If I pass some legislation that gives reparations to blacks, anybody can go down there and check black, be black, receive reparations. They can't let that happen. It's many reasons why you can't do reparations, but that's just one of them. If you can't prove, right? If race ain't if there's no qualifications or criteria for the racial categories, how can I prove that I'm supposed to be the person that received this money? How can you prove that I'm not supposed to receive the money? You can't. So that's one of the reasons why reparations through a racial category is a myth. It can never happen because people can adjust their race whenever they want. And that's the power that, you may not understand in this country, but that's the power that you have. And they cannot legislate no reparations with that in that type of system. Black isn't tied to ancestry anymore. Not since the 14th Amendment. All right. So this, like I say, if you haven't gone to the Social Security office yet, and you want to go and change your race, and somebody ever try to slow you down, like, nah, you can't do that. Revisions to the standards for classification of the federal data on race and ethnicity. Okay? If you type that in, Federal Register Notice, October 30th, 1997, and you go down to D, let's go down to D, A, background, B, C.
Hey, y'all.
Good morning. Good morning. Bang, you go down to D, right? What OMB decided, right? And you go down to those last two right here. The OMB decided that we cannot establish any criteria or qualifications. So somebody be like, nah, you can't do that. Hold on. I can't check white? What do you mean? Are you trying to say that there's some type of criteria or qualifications for whiteness? Is that what we saying? Oh, okay. What you trying to say? You look, blood quantum, look. Oh, well, my skin ain't light enough for you? oh, what you saying? My skin ain't light enough? What we saying? No, you can't. You look. You can't. Ain't no criteria for this. Okay, wait a minute. It says, do not tell. This is directions for the people who collecting. Do not tell the individual who he or she is, or specify how. You can't tell nobody how they supposed to fill out the form, how they supposed to classify him or herself. You can't do that. Wait a minute. I know you ain't trying to tell me I can't. Are you giving me advice? Because the Federal Register say you can't do that. Right? You go print this little D part out. You go in there with your little paperwork, with your little D, print it all out, just waiting for somebody to fake on you. And you show them this right here, be like, wait a minute. Federal Register say do not tell the individual who he or she is. Right? You just said, I can't do that. Wait a minute. I can't do that? That sound like you telling me in your official position as a federal employee, I got paperwork that say you can't do that, but this is what it sounds like to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. Why are you telling me, the individual, that's me, who he or she is? Are you doing that to me? Because this say right here in the Federal Register, you can't do it. OMB say that you can't do that. This come from the office of the president. Donald Trump say you cannot tell me who I am when it come to filling out this racial category here. Donald Trump say that. Why I say that? Because this come from the office of the president and OMB. Our president is Donald Trump right now. So Donald Trump say you can't tell me who I am when I come down here and I want to change my race. Guess what those Donald Trump say? Donald Trump say ain't no criteria. Ain't no qualification. When you stopping me from changing my race, could you be suggesting that I don't meet the criteria? Are you looking at me and you feeling like from your visual observation that you see that I might not meet the criteria or the qualifications? Because the paperwork say from the president, Donald Trump say, ain't no criteria to meet here. Donald Trump say ain't no qualifications. Are you suggesting that I didn't meet some requirement? See, I want y'all to swag, and I'm so sick and tired of people telling me I went to one joint and they was like, nah. That's enough of that. We about to stop that right now. This video is gonna stop any federal organization that you go down there and try to change your race. You're going to show them that Donald Trump say ain't no qualifications or criteria for this. Ain't he the president? Because this come from the office of the president. Donald Trump say you can't tell me the individual who I am. If I show you this paperwork from the office of the president, OMB, are you still going to deny me my right to change my race here at this Social Security office that's governed by the federal government? Would you do that? Now this becomes about your job more than it is about me changing my race. You want to be here? Because you denying an individual their right to conduct business with the country. That's what this is. This is my national identification number, right? This is me doing business with the country. You are impeding my ability to contract. You want to get real lawyer-like? Wait a minute. This is a contract that you holding for me. My contract. Ain't my name on it? Don't I gotta sign it? You just holding it. Could you be telling me that there's some qualifications that I have not met? Because if you doing that, Donald Trump said you can't do that. You want to mess with Donald Trump? So look, Jeff, I know you didn't have this when you went down there, but this is just for them people who ain't gone yet, who feel a little scared, who feel like, oh man, they're going to look at me like I'm stupid. Look, with this information in your pocket now, who going to be looking at who's stupid? You know the law. If they give you the stink face or look at you like you dumb now, you can pop the paper. Look, paperwork powerful, I know. We wanted something to show. Now we just going to be like, take a look at this. Take a look at D from the OMB, Office of the President. Take a look at the last two down there, right there. Is that you? You federal employee that's creating criteria that ain't there? Would you be somebody that's trying to prevent an individual? Are you trying to tell me? Because it sounds like you trying to tell me. Look at the word they use. TEL. Are you trying to tell me? And this is the thing. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. Don't be mad. Like, nah, you gotta do this with swag. If you gotta make this an enjoyable experience, you can't be going in there and having your blood pressure get to the roof. With a word like tell, you get to wag your neck and you get to look. Is you trying to tell me? I know you ain't trying to tell me. And then laugh at him a little bit like, oh, I'm just playing. But that is the law right there. Look, but all jokes aside, though, that is the law. Please don't be trying to tell me, because that's what it feel like. Don't get caught up in my neck. But you trying to tell me, though. Your job is to process this information, not give legal advice. Right? Is that what, because lawyers be telling, but you ain't no lawyer. You process paperwork. So can you please process my new race? Please? You make me white? Thank you. Because it ain't no qualifications. Because if you're looking at my skin and you feel like I don't meet the criteria, well, nah, you get one. That ain't, you don't understand how this work then. Well, then you just don't understand how this work. Ain't no criteria. So So, because it ain't no criteria now, I came down here to process my new contract. Please do not inhibit my ability to contract here. Please don't do that to me. Can you just please process this new white person? But this the thing also. Now, the power of the quote unquote black female in America. Guess who make more black people in America? Black females, right? Because when y'all have birth and you fill out that Social Security for your child, after that birth certificate, you do that Social Security. They always throw that Social Security in your face. If black mothers would stop hitting black for their kids at birth, right? They can stop blackness in America quicker than anybody. Think about that. The power of the black female, right?
Okay.
Is the power.
Okay, Mom. Okay.
Mute your mic, Nutter. Nutter, mute your mic. But the power of the black female is the power to not be introducing blacks to this country anymore, to be not making their kids black. From birth, they will be creating citizens. The power of the black female to create whiteness and to change the black demographics in America. No other group of people can do it more than the black female. And so, it's so powerful and so important for, young ladies to be sharing this information because, they're the ones that, hold the future generations in their belly. They're the ones that create the racial, category that their babies are in when they fill that paperwork out at birth. And so, for the black female, this is such an important thing to understand when you're filling that paperwork out, what you're hitting, what are you creating? If you thought it was about ancestry, you thought it had some genetic tie, biological tie, you know now that is not the case. What are we checking when I'm making a black baby? What am I creating when I hit black for my baby? And this information is telling you, well, you had an option to make him a citizen by checking white, but you didn't. You hit black for him, and now you created another person that this country can exploit. Another black to exploit. So this information is key to people who want to change their race now and people that are going to be creating humans in the future in this country. You should have babies that never were black.
Okay. All right.
Nutter.
I love you. All right.
Nutter, mute your mic.
Talk to you later. Okay, you too.
Oh boy.
Okay. See you later.
Nutter, mute your mic. Nutter, mute your mic. Kaneda,
Oh.
mute your mic.
Sorry about that. That was Mom.
All right, let's see. So what else did I want to show? Hold on, Jeff. Is that gonna work, Jeff?
Yeah, it should work. I don't see why not. I mean, the future of our generation is in our hand. So, it makes sense to me.
Anybody that's scared to go, Jeff, if they printed out D, is that good enough to take down to the social and be like, look,
Yeah,
ain't no criteria, ain't no qualifications.
right.
I'm sorry, I had missed something. What was the what was it that you had mentioned,
Okay.
Imani? I'm sorry.
All right. Well, what we're doing, we didn't have anything for you to take down to the Social Security office. Okay? Any paperwork that you can take with you. That if you had some government worker try to tell you that, nah, you can't do that, which we've had people have that experience. Some people have gone down to the social to change their race, and they've had federal workers tell them that they can't do it, right? I wanted to give you some paperwork that you could take down to slow up any federal worker trying to deny you your right to contract. Okay, so what I showed the group is this right here. This right here is the revisions to the standards for the classification on federal data on race and ethnicity. This is the law that governs how the federal government has to collect data on race. This is the law that governs how the federal government has to collect race data. Okay. Who? What agency? Executive Office of the President. Is that the top? All right. And then the other agency is the Office of Management and Budget. I think that's so important because these are the people who manage the budget of the country. Okay. They manage the money, the bank. Okay. Now, when you live in a society that got white privilege and white supremacy, right, and you have federal programs that were supporting this, right, you already know Office of Management and Budget was behind a lot of that managing of the budget. And this is the organization who wants your federal data on race. They operate off of the data on race. Let me repeat. The Office of Management and Budget operates off the information on race we give them voluntarily. The Office of Management and Budget manages the country's budget, the money, off of the voluntary racial and ethnicity information that we give them. Is that clear, Eric? All right. That's clear, Eric.
That's checkmate.
I'm just saying that if in a country that you got a privilege for some, right, and you got a department that manages the budget, and they do so with the data that we voluntarily give them on race and ethnicity. And so if some getting more than others, whose fault is it if we the ones giving them the information? All right, let me continue. All right, let me just continue. Let's get Nutter caught up. All right, because Nutter was late, so let's catch her up.
Sorry.
Nah, it's all good. Mute your mic. Mute your mic. Mute your mic. You getting caught up right now. Supplementary information. It says a background. All right. This is the thing. I can get into some real data, some real details on this, but development of the data standard stemmed in large measure from the new responsibilities to enforce civil rights laws. See, civil rights laws, guess what? Every time you see civil rights laws, this is what I want y'all to think. When you see civil rights laws, right, blacks and whites are not equal in America, right? Because one is citizen and one is a non-citizen. But they both free though. You got two classes of people. They are free, but they're not equal because one is a citizen, one is not. Every time you see civil rights laws, this is about discrimination, right? Anytime you see the word discrimination, you have to understand that you cannot discriminate against equal people. But you can have discrimination laws if you're dealing with two people that are not equal. Every time you see discrimination, they're just trying to make two free people that are not equal seem equal. Okay? Every time you see that, discrimination and civil rights. This is black people saying, I don't want to be white or a citizen. I want to stay black. And because I want to stay in this position, now I have to come up with laws, right, for both of you two different classes now to try to make it seem like it's some equality between y'all, but it really ain't because you two different class of people. But listen, the big part of this one is Nutter, to catch Nutter up. It says the categories, the racial categories represent a social, political construct. Social and political, right? Blackness is social, but it's also political and lawful too. Construction designed for collecting data on race, right? Watch this. and are not, the categories are not anthropologically or scientifically based. Okay? So Nutter, we go here because we want to hear the government say that these categories are not anthropological. That's the study of humans. We want the government to say that there ain't no science that governs racial categories. No science. So that if you try to connect your ancestry, your bloodline, all of that stuff to race, we saying the government don't look at it that way. All right. If I want to go even a step further, comprehensive review process. Number one, say the racial and ethnic categories set forth in the standards should not be. That's not right. Yeah, not be interpreted as primarily biological or genetic in reference. Okay, so we already told you it ain't anthropological. We said it is not scientific, and then we're gonna double down and say it's not biological or genetic. I think that covers all of the science. We cannot connect race to science because, as far as the government is concerned, race ain't science, and they're clear with that. All right. So Nutter, I'm saying to you, if you didn't go down to the Social Security office and you needed some type of paperwork that can slow down some federal employee that tries to say, no, you can't do that, I'm showing you and I'm giving you the paperwork that governs your choice. All right, now let's go down some more because that was B. We're going to go past C, and y'all can read all of this. I encourage you to read it all. But just me being a nerd, reading it all, 25 times, I be finding stuff, and guess what? This is the OMB's decision. D is what they decided. Okay? And I'm showing you this Nutter because at the bottom of what they decided, the last two are the ones that are most important to us because the last two say the OMB decided not to establish criteria or qualifications, such as blood quantum levels, that are to be used in determining a particular individual's race or ethnic classification. The federal government is saying, as far as we are concerned, because race ain't science to us, there ain't no criteria or qualification to none of these categories. You could check anyone you want. Okay, and if I'm not clear enough when I say that, well, I'm gonna go one more level and I'm gonna say, look, we are not to tell an individual as a federal employee, we are not to tell an individual who he or she is. So first, it ain't no qualification, and then two, you for sure cannot tell nobody who they are because there ain't no qualification. So to bring Nutter up to speed, what we have done is we have put together some paperwork, not even put together. We're showing you where you can find the paperwork that will show you how this works.
You gonna ask, if anybody got questions.
Mute your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Mute your mic.
To my son, okay.
No problem. Welcome. Welcome.
Lonnie?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I, if it's okay, can I also add to even the when you go on the census? Because I know the census is coming out, 2020. Because even the census says you have the right to self-identify.
That's correct, Nutter. In this, here we go, right here. Effective date. So watch this. Effective date, right? It says the new standards will be used by the Bureau of the Census. Okay, so just like you said, when you read this whole thing, it's number one, the census is a federal program. Every federal program uses this definition of race. And the states have to conform also. So yes, you are 100% correct when you mention the census because yes, these standards will be used by the Bureau of the Census. And just like you said, the best way is is to get information from the person themselves. Self-identify. That is not just in the census, that is in race in America. You are supposed to self-identify, and nobody can tell you who you are, and there are no criteria for the racial categories. And it just proves, once again, when we talk about the differences between ethnic nationalism and civic nationalism, right? We've heard so much that they don't teach civics in school no more, right? Well, we don't teach civics in school no more, but nobody really understands what are they missing. What are you not being taught then? What's the reason for taking civics out? What are they trying to hide, right? Well, you in a country, right, that operates, their brains operate as if we live in ethnic nationalism, where race is tied to your blood. And when you listen to the news and everything, the propaganda in this country is always your race is your blood, your race is your skin. But in reality, you live in civic nationalism. If you want to take civics out, well, you want to take away the people's understanding that this civic nationalism. We don't want them to even use this word civic. Civic, let's take civic all the way out, because civic is a way to get to the answer. Civic, that word civic is a way to get to the answer. So if we take civics out, right, then all that does is reinforce more this whole ethnic nationalism approach to your country, that your race is your blood, that your race is your skin. And so that's why you take civics out. If you start to study civics, civic nationalism, you'll start to see that, hold up, we still got racial categories, but we not on race no more. So now these categories, if they still there, they got to mean something different than blood and ancestry. These categories, if they still there, the meaning got to change. And they did. Before they was exclusive. Now they inclusive. You talk about diversity and inclusion. The best way of inclusion for this country is for everybody to check white. Now you won't have a diversity of rights between people because everybody will have the same rights. White rights, citizen rights. I wonder if that's enough for today. I want to make another point. I think I was clear on that. But another point I'm making in the book, and is that the federal government does not have jurisdiction over black people, right? And Dred Scott was a case that showed, that the case was dismissed because blacks shouldn't even have been able to bring any charges in the federal court system. Another good piece of evidence that supports this is that I was just thinking, I was like, black codes, Jim Crow, none of these laws were federal laws. And think about that. This whole time of racism and all of this, anti-miscegenation and all of these laws that was separating our country, that was separating the citizens from the non-citizens, Jim Crow, none of these laws were federal. If I'm making an argument that the federal government didn't have jurisdiction over the blacks, right? As soon as these blacks became a thing through 13th Amendment, 4 million, before you didn't have a million at all. You probably had in the whole country thousands of blacks. Now after the 13th Amendment, you got millions across all the states. From the period of 1865 to 1965, that's civil rights, Jim Crow, all of that. None of the laws, the Jim Crow or Black Code laws, none of them were federal laws. They were all state level laws. When we talk about this country and we talk about the racist past and all that type of stuff, we be thinking that the federal government was behind some of these laws, this de jure and all that. But in reality, it was at the state level that all of these anti-miscegenation, all of these Jim Crow, all of these laws were at the state level. Just showing you just another little piece of evidence to show that the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction over blacks. Because they're not citizens of the federal government, they don't have jurisdiction over them. They can't make no laws for the blacks. All the laws that affect the blacks that the federal government has anything to do with, they can't directly name blacks as if they have jurisdiction over them. They have to create laws that white people have to obey or compel their performance in a way that it residually helps blacks, but not directly, residually. For example, our greatest piece of legislation I think people point to is the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act was an act that was trying to create equality within our country between the two races. Remember, two unequal people. But the Civil Rights Act was the only reason why the Civil Rights Act was able to have any force of law was because they used the Commerce Clause, not the 14th Amendment equality, equal protection in law. Okay. When everybody is the same status, if there's equality between the classes, when you have an equal protection law under the 14th Amendment, you can use that law every time you can prove that you wasn't treated equally. Okay? This should have been a law that blacks were able to use over and over and over and over and over again in a society where they were unequals, but then they gained their equality, quote unquote, through the 14th Amendment. But blacks were not able to use the equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment. Never, because they're not equal. The only way that they was able to do this 14th Amendment that provided some semblance of equality is going through the interstate commerce. Article 1. They had to do some backdoor stuff. Okay. All of this information, every time we meet, everything is about citizenship or not. Black is not, white is. Everything is about what the choice of race is now versus what you were taught that race meant in the past. Race is not race is not ancestry. Race is not anthropology. It's not biology. Because of this, anybody can choose any category, and we got to use our common sense. If you in a society where you got black people being exploited and you could choose any race you want, we got to use our choices wise. We got to say, wait a minute, if I know that this particular class is being exploited, I can do something about that. Let me change how I participate in this system and see if that makes a difference. But insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result.